doing this, but just extremely dangerous. And it's actually
At 3
kind of
o'clock.
hard probably for LAPD to follow him at this point.
Yes, because of the traffic, Lou, there's just very difficult for the ground units to get behind it. The airship right now is tracking it overhead, and he's looking like he's going to be exiting here at a high rate of speed. This is not good because he's got traffic. He's got nowhere to go. Oh, man. And cross traffic right there. That car, wow, barely stopping in time.
The allegedly stolen.
We've got some good interviews lined up, previewing both the Steelers and Eagles games coming up this weekend. The Eagles are they're traveling out west to take on the Las Vegas Raiders, who have, I think, lost 7 straight at this point in the season. And then you have the Steelers wearing their, I guess, custom uniforms. There it is, the alternative uniforms, the real dark black uniforms with the yellow block letters that seem to go over pretty well, and they're also bringing back the yellow end zones. So they're going all out in hopes that they could energize themselves for this big playoff type atmosphere for this game. Miami needing to keep their hopes alive with the win, and Pittsburgh trying to shore up their lead with the Baltimore Ravens not far behind, and the Bengals hopefully helping out the Steelers as they're playing Baltimore over the weekend as well. But Pittsburgh, yeah, they'll be looking to keep pace in their division as well. The Eagles sort of in a little bit of a slump, but we're not going to start with them just yet. We'll have, again, some interviews later lined up previewing both of those matchups. But you also have the MLB free agency going on right now as well. And there's been a lot of action. And the Phillies, most notably recently, the Mets, a lot of departures in what was a really disappointing season. The team missing the playoffs. They brought back Pete Alonso. They brought in Juan Soto, and they really were all hands on deck. Their really only big weakness going into last year was, the pitching and some bullpen issues as well. But the offense wasn't as good as advertised. It was a huge disappointment for the Mets, and you could argue 2024 may have been their chance to really get over the top and win the World Series, but they ended up falling short, taking the Dodgers to 6 games back in 2024. But yeah, this is a Mets team now that loses 2 key pieces that kept them relevant last year. The first being Edwin Diaz, the renowned closer known for the trumpet entrance, one of the MLB's best closers. I think he had actually a pretty good year last year. I know he dealt with some struggles the year before, but last year he really turned it on, was one of the best closers in the MLB. And the Mets sort of let him walk. The Mets let him walk to the Dodgers, who continue their spending spree, and they're looking to win back to, I think, back-to-back title in the MLB this year. Diaz will go there. I think he's the most expensive closer now, getting paid 3 years, $69 million. So a big boost to a Dodgers closing rotation that had a cast of characters last year. Particularly coming out of the bullpen, and they had some unsung heroes during that playoff run against Toronto, which they won in 7 games, but they bolster that bullpen and really add a premier closer to there, as they already have, if not the best, starting rotation in baseball, with Shohei Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, and reportedly there's some rumors surrounding Tariq Skubal as well, and whether the Tigers ownership will let him walk in exchange for a lot of high prospects that the Dodgers currently have. And I think one of the Dodgers' premier young players on their roster as well. So we'll see what transpires there. But the Dodgers, known for making some big money moves in a big market out there in LA, they look to continue that, making more moves this offseason, as we'll see what transpires with them. But in other Mets news, Pete Alonso, I think a 10-year veteran of the organization. A lot of Mets fans grew up with him, the all-star first baseman. He will no longer be with the Mets. There were some contract issues going on last offseason, but they seemed to get that resolved with Alonso signing a 1-year deal and what was looking like to be a potential World Series lineup for the Mets, but a team that did not even touch the playoffs this year. But he will be headed a little bit further down the East Coast, down to Baltimore, Maryland, as the Baltimore Orioles They were rumored to be really in on Kyle Schwarber. I think they matched the Phillies' offer, but Schwarber opted to return back to the Phillies on a 5-year $150 million deal. Well, the next best thing, you get another NL East All-Star. This time at first baseman, Pete Alonso, 5 years, $155 million. As Polar Bear Pete, the power-hitting first baseman, the guy that runs like a penguin, he's going to be headed down the shore a little bit to some warmer weather down there in Baltimore. A little bit nicer in the summers, a little bit less drastic there in the winters as well. So I'm sure he'll have an emotional return to Baltimore when they play there later this year. But yeah, I guess things wore thin there in New York. There are reportedly a lot of clubhouse, and the Mets now searching for answers as they lose 2 key pieces. But this is a huge loss for the Mets. This is a guy in Pete Alonso, which was, I think, really one of the only bright spots for that Mets team this past year. He was in the MVP running for the first, third of the year. He batted .272, hit 38 home runs, 126 RBIs. And it's just unfortunate to see them go. And you have to wonder now for the Mets, where does this team go? Like, where do you go from here? You lose your all-star closer. You lose your all-star first baseman. You just signed Juan Soto for a big 10-year deal. And Juan Soto's got to be like, is this what I signed up for? Is this what I came here for? Well, I thought I was competing for a World Series, and right now you're looking maybe to be the 3rd best team in your division, with the Atlanta Braves looking to return the form, and then of course you have the Philadelphia Phillies re-upping. We'll get to that in just a moment, but in August, I think Pete Alonso, he just became the all-time leader in home runs, surpassed Darryl Strawberry's home run record of 252, as he ended the season with 264 home runs, and arguably one of the best players in Mets history. But it was Alonso's output offensively that I think really made him an attractive option for this Baltimore team that had a lot of high hopes. This was a young team with a lot of high hopes, a lot of expectations headed into this year, and they really just flopped. Their pitching was among the worst in the MLB. Their bullpen was not good. Some of their younger players took a dip as well in their offensive production, and things just took a turn for the worst for Baltimore last year. But they seem to be going back all in, so trying to sign some marquee free agents, trying to get back to the mountaintop and reclaim in an AL East division that was really anyone's race. Toronto was in the running late. Toronto was in the running late. You had the Yankees there late as well. Boston was in there too before some injuries struck them. So this is a really competitive AL East division, and the Baltimore certainly not being shy by making that move. Alonso, again, he was a 31-year-old. He was a beloved homegrown star there in Queens, and he really burst onto the scene in 2019 when he had 53 home runs, and he really became a fixture for the organizations over his last 6 seasons. As I mentioned, great power hitter, big personality, and he really did love what they were doing in New York. But it just seemed like things were running out, and maybe the Mets needed a change of personalities in the clubhouse, as the team could never seem to get over the mountaintop like last year when they ultimately missed the postseason. But this was unfortunate move for the Mets, but the AL East gets a big-time player as they look to pair him with Adley Rutschman and Jordan Westburg, who really I had some solid seasons a couple seasons ago, but did not get that same production this past season. And then, of course, you have the Philadelphia Phillies going all in and signing Kyle Schwarber to a 5-year, $150 million deal. It's been reported that the Phillies, I think, opted for an extra year of another $30 million cap hit in return for maybe, not packing as much money into a shorter 4-year contract. That's what it seemed like. I think most people thought, a player of his age, I think he's like 32 years old. 5 years is a lot. 5 years, you don't know what a player is going to be in 5 years. And that's why when some of these players are signing 10-year contracts with Bryce Harper, the first 5 years are going to seem like a beautiful pairing. The last 5 years of that contract, it's going to get ugly because typically players start declining, obviously, with age. But Schwarber, we all know what Kyle Schwarber can do. The Phillies leadoff batter loves the city of Philadelphia. There were some rumors maybe that this was it for this veteran bunch as the Phillies return a really old lineup of Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Alec Boehm. They have Bryson Stott, and this group continuously just has not been able to get it done. They went from making a World Series just within the last 5 years to really getting bounced out around earlier each of the last couple of years. They got, I think 3 years ago, they got bounced in the NLCS, then the NLDS, and then I think the NLDS again last year as well, as this team just can't seem to find a way to get over the hump. They can't, again, it was just a couple seasons ago that this team was up 3-2 in the World Series, and they lost 2 games at home. And that's not something that I think sat well with many fans, sat well with many people in the organization. But they're bringing Kyle Schwarber back, who is, I think second in the MVP race in the NL. I think was among the NL league leaders in home runs as well. But yeah, Schwarber is going to be coming back on a 5-year, $150 million deal. I know some people expect him maybe goes home to Cincinnati. As I mentioned, Baltimore was really in on him as well. Reportedly, the Pittsburgh Pirates had a short-term, 4-year, $120 million deal, but I also think that was maybe to boost the Phillies' offer a little bit. But Schwarber really has made it clear that he did not want to leave, and Schwarber's hometown made him a 5-year, $125 million offer as well. And he even visited Great American Ballpark during the Thanksgiving week as well. But unfortunately, Kyle decides to go back to Philadelphia and give it one more shot, where last year he had 56 home runs, led the MLB 132 RBIs. And in his first 4 seasons with the Phillies, Schwarber and Dodgers Shohei Ohtani ranked second in the MLB with 187 home runs. Only Aaron Judge, who with his 210 home runs, have hit more. And Schwarber's 856 OBS ranks 15th out of 124 players during that span as well. But not only was it Kyle Schwarber making a return, Rob Thompson gets extended through the 2027 season, and I know he's a very hot button issue. Rob Thompson is loyal to his guys, and it is proven to a fault. Sometimes his managerial decisions are in question, and sticking with guys a little bit too long, that has always been in question with Rob Thompson. But there is no question that I think that the players really like him, outside of Nick Castellanos, of course, who seems as good as gone in Philadelphia right now. But Rob Thompson extended through the 2027 season as the Phillies look to continue that run. And sticking with their core guys. It's reported that they also have an offer on the table to JT Realmuto, another one of those core players, as the Phillies remain committed to winning with this veteran roster. But honestly, again, I could see bringing back Kyle Schwarber, but you're probably going to lose at this point. You're probably going to lose Ranger Suarez, because I really can't see them having enough money to splurge around to keep all these players. And then in a couple off seasons, you're going to have some guys like Christopher Sanchez wanting a new deal. And Philadelphia is really going to have to make some tough decisions. But reportedly, the Philadelphia, they're not done. They could look to acquire Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman, Bo Bichette, Cody Bellinger. They're all on the table as the free agent market. It is running a little bit thin there in terms of the top free agents, but the moves still need to be made, because there is still some outfielding issues with this Phillies team, particularly some offensive production there in the outfield. You're looking at Alex, is he the same player? Because he's going to be coming up on a qualifying offer this year. I think this is the last year of his deal, so could Philly look to move him? But Phillies, they are committed to winning with this core. But if the Phillies really want to acquire another impact hitter to help this lineup, they'll likely have to trade a player or two from the current 26-man roster to clear some payroll. So some tough decisions are going to be down the road for this Philadelphia team. But Dave Dombrowski, he can sometimes be really aggressive. So you really can't rule out what the Phillies are or aren't going to do this offseason yet. But it's going to be interesting to see what this team has left in the tank. As I mentioned, veteran team. This team is seemingly worn down as sometimes the seasons have worn on. They seem to get hot in mid-June, July, but I think fans sort of know what this team is. They don't care about June or July at this point. They care about what they're doing in September and October to keep going, because you have to remember Zach Wheeler's getting older. I think he has a firm retirement date of the end of 2027. So that's really within the next. You've got 2 years left of. You've really got 2 years left of Zach Wheeler. You know, as I mentioned, Christopher Sanchez. They've got some promising prospects down in their farm system. Do they bring up the pitcher Andrew Painter? Is this the season where he finally comes up and sort of maybe replaces a guy like Ranger Suarez, and they start him getting up in the pen? Justin Crawford, as I mentioned, he's one of those outfielders. Could he be the team's future center fielder? Aiden Miller and Painter and Crawford, this is probably their best chance that they've had in a while to make the opening day roster, and Miller could be in the big leagues by the summer, but we'll see what happens with them. But these situations, they're probably going to develop over the next couple of weeks, but it's going to be interesting to see what this Philadelphia team can do, because they floundered the last couple of years, but they believe in this group. And at some point, they're getting older. You have to start thinking about trading some of these guys if you're not in position in June or July, and start looking ahead towards the future. But it's abundantly clear that they're still confident that the money that they've invested in this group can yield a World Series in the near future, and they remain committed to that. I guess maybe they don't feel that they don't see anyone on the free agent market who can give them an immediate boost, and rightfully so. Kyle Schwarber's just finished second in the MVP race, had over 50 home runs this offseason. JT Realmuto's still one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, but his offense has sort of tapered off a bit as well, so that's something to keep track of. And the team is really limited with what they can do in terms of young talent. Of course, you have Painter, Painter and Crawford are probably the two notable guys that could see big league time and making the opening day roster, but they still need to add key positions. They need to add depth. They need to add infielding depth. They need to find capable some outfield bats as well, and that's going to be something that the team needs to pay attention to as this offseason rolls on. But as of right now, the Phillies are doubling down on this roster. And in Pittsburgh Pirates news, the Pirates got one of the Mets bullpen options, Gregory Soto, on a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. Soto is a guy with some promising stuff, has some control issues. I think he has 11% career walk percentage, but he's got a big arm. He's a solid left-on-left bullpen arm, and he's got a 97-mile-an-hour sinker, which can prove lethal in some big at-bats. But the Pirates still looking for some bullpen arms. Certainly a solid addition. They were looking for another left-handed arm out of that pen, but their biggest needs are offense. They've been tied to, I think, Brendan Lowe from Tampa Bay. That's a name to keep an eye on. But the Pirates, until the Pirates make a big splash move, none of the fans are going to take them seriously. Paul Skeens has talked about this in the offseason. Paul Skeens has even offered his services to be part of the recruiting pitch and seeing what this team could do and seeing if they could attract some big names and be part of, quote-unquote, something different. That's their approach right now. They're trying to say you could be a part of something different, some real change within the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. This is a team that sees a spot in the NL Central, an NL Central division that has been ruled right now by the Brewers, and also the Reds as well, as they made the postseason, ultimately falling to the Dodgers this postseason, but the Pirates see an opportunity, and I agree with them. There's an opportunity there because I am not sold on some of these other teams. The Pirates have a real opportunity with Paul Skeens, with hopefully O'Neal Cruz can develop some more offense, as it looked like he was going to have a breakout season early in the year, but didn't really follow through later in the year. Had a great performance at the home run derby, but again, couldn't follow through on that. Nick Gonzalez had a solid year for them at second base. They look to get Jared Jones back in the fold this offseason. Braxton Ashcraft, they have some really promising pitching. Mitch Keller and Mike Burrows are two names to keep an eye on as they look to move some starting pitching in exchange for some bats, so we'll see what happens there. But it should be an interesting offseason for this Pittsburgh Pirates team as well as they look to upgrade their roster. But we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk some Eagles. We're going to talk their matchup against the Raiders. We're going to talk some Steelers. We have all that and more coming up next, so stay tuned for an action-packed rest of the 28-22 Sports Night sponsored by Hyundai. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another 28-22 Sports Night episode sponsored by Hyundai, our great sponsor here for putting out some great vehicles. But now, you know who hasn't been putting out some great product recently? The Philadelphia Eagles, particularly the offense, because their defense, my God, I think this is the best defense in football. This defense is balling out. Vic Fangio's doing a hell of a job. The Dunmore native with his job coordinating. And man, oh man, the offensive talent that the Philadelphia Eagles have does not match the production and output they're getting. And again, I don't think it's one issue. I don't think you look at this team and be like, oh, it's the it's the coordinator. It's the QB, it's the offensive. I think it's a multitude of issues. I think there's one glaring issue, and that's the coordinator, but I don't think everyone else is truly exempt from blame because now the Eagles have dropped 3 straight. They just lost 22-19 against the Chargers in LA, and they haven't put up over 21 points since October 26th. That's the week before their bye week against the New York Giants, which they beat 38-20. In the weeks following, Dallas or Green Bay on November 10th, they put up 10, won that game. Detroit, they won 16-9, they won that game. Dallas, they put up 21, lost that game 24-21 after scoring on the first 3 possessions and then going zilch the rest of the way. Chicago, they lost 24-15 at home, get booed off the field, booed throughout that game. And then the LA Chargers, 22-19, they fall in that one now to fall to 8-5. And with 4 games left, well, luckily the schedule eases up a little bit because they're home against the Raiders. So they don't have to deal with I think I said earlier they travel out west. No, they do not travel out west. They are home against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are a team that we talked to Chris Matthews earlier in the week. yesterday actually, and he talked a lot about this is a team that, or this is an organization and a place where you're playing. You need a win for people to show up, and the Raiders, let's just say, have not done that. They have lost 7 straight, and Geno Smith was injured. They left with a shoulder injury. Kenny Pickett went in to finish that game and scored the last 10 points. And we really don't know who's going to start. Pete Carroll has been adamant about Geno Smith being the starter of this team and being his guy. And it seems like there is an obvious connection, as Chris touches on in our interview, where he really likes Geno. And there's the obvious connection to Seattle, but it seems like, I just think he's gravitated towards the positivity Geno exudes, and he's just getting beat up out there. The offensive line has been horrid. They haven't been able to run the ball. They don't have the weapons outside to support Geno, and that's just a team that was really going into the year. You're probably thinking around, okay, maybe they're a 6 to 8, maybe 9-win team. They haven't even been that. They have right now just are in the midst of a 4-game losing streak and are really trying to find themselves. Defensively, they've had some bright spots. Max Crosby, obviously, they brought in a lot of veteran linebackers, Landon Roberts, Jermaine Pratt to really help out there and give them a spark defensively. Their secondary has been pretty solid as well at times. But this is a team that just hasn't been able to do anything offensively, and they haven't been able to protect the QB, and offense has just really been an issue throughout this season. And then, of course, you look at the rest of the Philadelphia schedule. You got your travel to Washington. Washington's horrid. And then you travel to Buffalo. That'll be a tough game, obviously, in Buffalo. 4:30 start time, primetime game. And then you have, I believe, Washington again to close out the season at home. So again, this is a team that probably will in their division, will make the playoffs, but they will probably be, if the rate continues at where they're going, they will probably be a first-round upset pick depending on who they match up with in a really tight NFC wild card currently. But we'll see what happens there. But all the focus this week is on the Las Vegas Raiders. Before we get to that, though, the Chargers game, man, was it bad. I mean, they beat up Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was beat up in that football game. They sacked him 7 times. They were all over him. They turned him over, I think once. They turned him over once. They made him fumble. And the offense just couldn't do anything. Jalen Hurts completed just over 50% of his passes for 240 yards. He was only sacked 1 time, 4 interceptions, one of those maybe not being his fault. A little high, but A.J. Brown certainly could have brought that in. He had the 2 turnovers on one play where he threw an interception. They forced the fumble. He recovered it, and then he fumbled again to give it back to the Chargers. And Jalen Hurts, I think, arguably played the worst game of his pro career, where he was just awful. He was missing throws. He was not getting through his progressions consistently. He just didn't seem comfortable back there. I still think the play calling is an issue. I think they run too much shotgun. It's becoming predictable, especially if you want to run the football. Saquon, aside from his 52-yard run, I didn't think was great. I still thought he was getting hit at the line of scrimmage a lot, but still had 122 yards and a TD. A.J. Brown, again, went for 6 catches, 100 yards. Dallas Goedert, of course, was second there with 8 receptions, 78 yards. But the offense still couldn't get anything going. The turnovers, your defense still sacking Justin Herbert 7 times. And again, against a pretty good LA offense with Herbert. They have Kamani Vidal outside. Herbert only passed for 139 yards. He only had 12 completions. This defense did a really good job. The offense just stunk. I think Jesse Minter was really confusing Jalen Hurts with some of his schemes, and especially on that last interception. Jalen Hurts tried to thread the needle, but Cam Hart, I think, tipped it up, and Tony Jefferson ended up intercepting that in a play that was designed, I think, for Jahan Dotson on a little bit of a bench route. But this Eagles offense is just horrid. I don't know what's going on, and again, I think it's a multitude of things. It's not just one issue. But with this much talent and this team not figuring out, and I know there's people calling for them to bench Jalen Hurts, to put in Tanner McKee. Listen, I can guarantee you right now, you may think that's going to work. You're 13 weeks into the year. You can't fire anyone. I know Nick Sirianni said he was more involved with the offensive I guess, play design and play calling this week, it didn't seem like it. I mean, there was really nothing that I think jumped out at me that really was like, oh, that's a good idea. This Eagles offense just still remains so inconsistent. They can't run the ball consistently. Their pass concepts are lazy. There's no creativity. They're too shotgun heavy. They're too predictable. Their play calling on first and second down is too predictable. They're running on first down, and they sort of just see, oh, we'll see what happens from there. But they're not winning on early downs. They're not being able to control, these 8-minute drives and 10-minute drives that they were able to go on last year. They aren't getting these big bursts from Saquon. Outside of that, I think that was the fake tush push where Saquon took it the distance and really caught the Chargers off guard. There's none of that this year. There's none of these big splash plays. You get the occasional A.J. Brown big play down the field, but outside of that, there's really nothing. You look at this offense, it's bare, it's predictable, it lacks creativity, it lacks execution. Nick Sirianni, who's supposed to be the vibes guy, is sort of like, I don't know, the vibes don't seem there this year. This doesn't seem like a team that's going to make a run and control games down the stretch. This doesn't seem like the same Philadelphia Eagles team that bullied teams for, 4 quarters, ran the football well, dominating, suffocating defense. It's not that team. This looks like a team who's destined for a first-round exit, and I know that's what Philadelphia Eagles fans don't want to hear, but that's what it looks like to me. And over the next 4 weeks, they're going to have to figure that out, but that starts with this week against the Las Vegas Raiders. And we talked to Chris Matthews yesterday about what the Raiders need to do to expose this Eagles defense, and if there's any chance that the Raiders can pull off an upset and maybe shock some people.
A pleasure to be joined by the sports director out in Las Vegas, KLAS. It's Chris Matthews joining us ahead of the Eagles and Raiders. The Raiders making the trip here to Philadelphia this weekend to take on a Birds team that is in I won't say a similar situation to the Raiders, but both are on losing streaks right now, Chris. It's not pretty for either team, but I do want to start with your folks out there in Vegas. You were just alluding to it before we pressed record. 2-11. You never thought you'd see the Raiders on a 7-game losing streak in the situation they're in. How do you summarize, I guess, what has happened with the Raiders this season for our Eagles fans that maybe haven't, tuned into those 4:25 local time games for us and watch the Raiders this season?
Yeah, I think what it is, you go way back to even the offseason, back during OTAs and training camp and getting ready for the season. There was so much optimism and excitement involving Pete Carroll. He's done it on the biggest stages of football, the NFL, and of course in college with UFC. So when you have this Pete Carroll guy coming in here and everybody's excited about what he can possibly do, and then you had Geno Smith, who everybody kind of thought was probably a top 12, maybe quarterback in the league, coming off some very successful, exciting years up in Seattle. And I kept saying at the time, and then they draft Genty way back in the spring. And I thought that was kind of a good move because it kind of, he's a marquee type guy, a position guy that you can build around and promote, and just a really super kid. So I thought that would be a good idea. But I guarantee that nobody thought the offensive line would be as bad as it is. They might have got into the season thinking, well, it's serviceable. Hopefully it holds up. That's kind of the question mark. Well, come to find out, that offensive line is absolutely terrible. Then you have injuries to Colton Miller and Jackson Powers Johnson. Then you switch these guys around, and it all adds up to a recipe for disaster. I mean, just like a running back group or an offensive line, you got to work together as an offensive line. And these guys have shuffled in and out, moved to the left, to the right, center, to the guard. I mean, then you got Colton Miller, your best guy, out. Jackson Powers Johnson, who's one of the, just a kind of a nasty guy that everybody likes. Hang on while I get my camera here on your live broadcast. I don't know what happened here, but it fell down.
You're good. We're checking out the beautiful blue and red, very patriotic, the tie. So it's all good, Chris.
So is that good? I don't know what happened there, but anyway. So yeah, I think everybody was kind of pretty excited about this season going in. Then they come out and they beat the New England Patriots, and okay, here we go. And I think a lot of people, I'm going to guess a lot of people probably had because coming off that 4-win season last year, I think a lot of people might have said, hey, this is maybe a 6, 7, 8-win team. I kind of thought they might win 10, or I mean 8. And some people said maybe 9 or 10 and maybe sneak into the playoffs with the talent they had, with a good Geno, with a Jacoby Myers, a Trey Tucker, and a Brock Bowers coming back at tight end, who's really one of the best tight ends in the league, and just a terrific player. So I think with all this kind of coming together, people were saying, hey, 7, 8, 9 wins, maybe 10, they get to the postseason. But as we know, following the New England game, they lose a couple, win one, and then they've lost 7 in a row. So now at 2-11, it's just, and you can imagine too, it's Las Vegas, so a lot of opposing fans like to come here. And after the game against the Broncos, which had to be 75-25 Bronco fans, I mean, it was just like a home game for Denver. All the Orange crushed the attendance numbers there for visiting fans. I'll tell you what, ton of fans from Denver who were here watching that game, and that's how it's going to be. I mean, you got to win here in Las Vegas. It's a different kind of a city. It's built that way, whether it's the gaming issues or not. But this is a city where, probably like Philadelphia fans, if you don't win, the people do not care and they'll get after you. And so that's kind of what's going on with Geno Smith. Does he play this weekend? Can he pick up perhaps? Is Geno going to be healthy enough? So we're still kind of waiting to hear a word on whether he's going to go in there. But I would just say, you know what, let's see what you have now. Go with the young guys. You don't want to use the word tank, but I guess it's Vegas and New York Giants with the 2 worst records and maybe 1, 2 in the draft. So you hate to use the word tank, but you know what? You can just say, we're going to rest Geno. He's injured. We're going to try out some of these younger guys and see what they can do as we prepare for the future. But that's kind of what it is. I mean, the offensive numbers, they play out. They're one of the worst offensive teams. In fact, in a couple of categories, they are the absolute worst team in the NFL. So I know the Eagles fans didn't like last night's game, and oh no, the sky's falling for the defending Super Bowl champions. But hey, it could be a lot worse.
You're right. You're right about that. And ultimately, I mean, I'm watching Geno Smith every Sunday, and the poor guy's grimacing by the third quarter, just in awful pain. His shoulder, his lower body, his head. He takes hit after hit. And one game you mentioned, the Patriots game back in Week 1. Ultimately, the Raiders have helped out their division rival in the Broncos, because now that tiebreaker comes into effect, where if the Patriots and Broncos finish with the same record, that common opponent win-loss record comes into effect, and the Patriots couldn't beat the Raiders, and the Broncos have beaten them twice. But Ricky, I'll let you go ahead here, because I know as a Steeler fan, you're familiar with Kenny Pickett, and you've also watched your fair share of Raiders football as well.
Yes, Kenny Pickett back in Vegas, traveling across the country. He's been on a couple, I think 4 teams now in the last 3 seasons. He's had his fair share around the league. But yeah, one of the big, question marks coming into the season was the Raiders' wide receiving core, especially now. They had Jacoby Myers, but they looked at it. They had Trey Tucker. They drafted a Jack Besh out of TCU. But I guess looking ahead, is it possible, they could turn to Kenny Pickett just to see what they have in him going forward? I know they signed Geno to that lucrative deal in the offseason, but things probably have not panned out the way that they planned, with signing Pete Carroll, signing a lot of players on the defensive side of the ball to give them more of a veteran presence. But that is all out the window as you sit there with 2 wins and coming from 7 straight losses. But is it possible we do see Kenny Pickett? And what are we looking at this wide receiving core as the season wraps up?
If you were asking me, I would say play Kenny Pickett. You might as well see what he's all about, what he has. Does he have a little bit of a future here? The other quarterback here is Aiden O'Connell. He's played a bit sparingly now and again over the last couple of years, but we kind of know what Aiden O'Connell's about. He's more of a stand-up pocket guy. He's not going to roll around and move the pocket. So we kind of know what Aiden O'Connell's about. But now let's see what this Kenny Pickett guy can do. I mean, you might as well. There's really, at 2-11, there's nothing really to play for. Absolutely. Well, there's absolutely nothing to play for except for draft positioning now. And so you might as well play your younger guys and some of these question mark guys and see what you have. Try to move forward. I could see him. I really can see him playing this week. Why not? Although Pete Carroll continues to say, if Geno's healthy, he's my guy. So we'll see. There, for some reason, there is a real strong connection. I can see the Seattle connection, obviously, but even beyond that, Geno's had just a rough season. But Pete Carroll is he's going to go with this guy if he's healthy enough to play.
Chris, what's it like getting to cover Max Crosby? He seems like he's a fun guy to be around and loves the game of football. And the first thing that always pops off the chart when you see him is the tattoos and the body art all over him. But he is, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or the numerous Broncos quarterbacks that have to play him twice a year, he is Justin Herbert. He is a pain to deal with if you're a quarterback and you see 98 running after you. What's it like getting to be around Max Crosby off season, during the season?
Yeah, he's probably one of the what word would I say? Probably he's one of the nicest guys you'll meet. He's fierce and all that on the field, and he just loves the game, obviously. I mean, there's nobody that likes football more than him, and that's probably the truth. First to arrive, last to leave, always thinking football, always talking about the future and getting better week in, week out. Always available to the press following losses, which they've had a lot. If there's one guy you kind of wish for Raiders success, it'd be for Max Crosby, because he put so much into it, and to get the results the team is getting, it's almost kind of disheartening, because you see what his passion and love for the game and love for the Raider organization to be so much better, and then to see what the team does, it's just so disappointing. So he's just a good guy. I mean, they got a late round pick on this kid, and he was just terrific. He's proved himself to be, a future Hall of Famer if he continues on the path that he's on. One of the best ends in the entire National Football League. Everybody pays attention to this guy. So, and he was just for the Raiders nominated the Walter Payton Award. So nomination. So this guy, he's out in the community doing a lot with his wife Rachel. He has a little daughter, and it's been documented his past and the alcohol abuse and so forth. Changed his life around. Doing wonderful things in the community for teenage kids and those who might have problems. So, boy, if you asked anybody, I guarantee if you asked anybody, nothing but praise for Max Crosby. They're lucky to have him on the team, and that he wants to be a Raider and continue to be a Raider. Got the big payday last year, and so he's committed. He loves it. He always talks to the press. He's just a good guy. In fact, he has a camp here every year that he brings all the former linebackers and defensive ends together, and he and Miller get together each year and at UNLV or one of the schools here, and they hold it'll be at UNLV from now on, but they hold a 2-day camp, and it's really Max Crosby in charge of this thing. Just he's a wonderful person. You would hope that all your NFL players could be like Max Crosby. That's just how good of a guy he is.
And yeah, he's going to provide a lot of trouble for this Eagles offensive line. I think he's going to be matched up with Fred Jackson this week, so we'll see how that goes. But the Eagles offensive line has not been as good as in past years, and that's given this team problems. They haven't been able to run the ball as good. But sort of looking ahead towards this matchup, what do you think the Raiders need to do offensively and defensively to make this a little bit interesting against an Eagles team that has really struggled over recent weeks? They had 5 turnovers in their last game against the Chargers and a loss there in LA. What do you think they could exploit here against the Eagles, an Eagles team that has struggled to really move the ball and also, really move the ball? They've been a star-studded team defensively, but they've really had some issues offensively.
Yeah, it seems almost as if they need to. They obviously can't fall behind because they don't have the firepower to get back into this thing. You would hope that it's almost a broken record with us here in Vegas too, because you would say, well, let's hope they can script out those first 15 plays and score and kind of get a little bit of momentum, but it really seems like it doesn't help. So let's just say that let's say that maybe Genty has a terrific game, that he doesn't get hit behind the line like he's always getting hit, that maybe he can bust off a few runs and score a few touchdowns, and maybe they get a lead and hang on. But it's everybody's so pessimistic, and I really can't blame him for that at 2-11 and 7-game losing streak, that you try to say, okay, what could the Raiders possibly do? We think, well, maybe they could run. Well, that offensive line's not very good. They probably can't run. Well, maybe they can pass. Well, Geno Smith's getting, he dropping back and he's already getting hit. He's been sacked like 30 times in the last 3 games or whatever. It's absolutely crazy. or maybe 4 games. So you got to kind of look at maybe some of the things and say, okay, how about Brock Bowers? There's one guy I would just look to Brock Bowers almost every single time you're going to go back and throw the ball. Put in some short little routes for Brock Bowers because he somehow can get the football. And other than that, I don't know what the Raiders really could do unless the Eagles make a lot of mistakes like they did against the Chargers on Monday night. That would be kind of the only hope that the Raiders would have, because offensively they're pretty inept, and defensively there's a lot of question marks. So it would have to be the Eagles turning the ball over. Hurts throwing some interceptions. That might give the Raiders a chance to stay in the game.
Well, I hope there's one thing that Raiders fans could have been happy about walking out of that game against the Broncos, and if they had the spread on Vegas's side, thanks to that field goal late in. Broncos player spending a little too much time on the back of a Vegas player. Hopefully some Raiders fans could have at least cashed in their check at the local casino.
That's right.
That's things all right, Chris. Hey, thank you. We appreciate your insights, sir. Appreciate you stopping by here on 2822 Sports tonight, and enjoy the game this weekend.
You bet. And we'll see what happens. It should be a game to look to, just to see if the Raiders can actually try to do something to slap this 7-game losing streak.
Number 3, if you're Vegas. Let's go for it.
All right.
Hello and welcome back to 2822 Sports Night. I'm your host, Ricky Turner. We're sponsored by Hyundai. It was a great interview from Chris Matthews. Try and remain positive, and I'll have a positive outlook on the rest of this Raiders season, but he probably said it best. If you're the Raiders, you're not, tanking, but it might be time to play some of those younger guys. And there's a lot of optimism coming in. You thought you had some pieces along a solid offensive line. They had Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker. They drafted Ashton Genty, the big star that they could promote in Vegas, the do-it-all guy who could be the face of their franchise, along with Max Crosby on the other side of the ball. But things have just not panned out. They hired Pete Carroll, and things have just signed Geno Smith. Things just haven't panned out. It's been one of those types of years for the Las Vegas Raiders. But now it's time to look at the other team in PA, a team that, you could argue maybe should not have won because of a quote-unquote, bad catch rule, but they ended up winning 27-22 against the Ravens to move to 7-6 and take control of the division. Pittsburgh has had that for most of the year, outside, I think, of 1 week, 1 or 2 weeks early in the year. But Pittsburgh now will look to bring in Miami, a team that struggles in the cold. Tua Tagovailoa is 1-7 in games below 46 degrees, but Pittsburgh is not without their concerns as well. They struggle defending the run. They've struggled the past 2 weeks to run the ball, despite being pretty high up in those categories. But we talked to WTAJ reporter Riley Holsinger on what the Steelers need to do this week and his thoughts on last week's game against the Baltimore Ravens.
Pittsburgh Steelers is the old man can still run. He showed that 1 yard touchdown run. But on a serious note for you, what's your biggest takeaway from that first game against the Ravens and ultimately the Steelers are able to pull out a victory?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, going back to it, I love seeing the discount double check from Aaron Rodgers there. Like, that almost, like, threw me back to being a kid once again, like, back to, like, I don't know, 2011, 2012, and just seeing Aaron Rodgers dominate, because it was one of his best games of the year. That was one of my main takeaways I had. But really, the other one I had, and it's probably the one that everybody in the NFL noticed, was the officiating. I mean, the officiating, there were so many calls in that game that really could have benefited Baltimore if they were called differently. You look in the first quarter with pretty much that field goal that Pittsburgh ends up kicking. There's a 15-yard penalty there. They end up getting the first down and scoring the touchdown immediately after. That's a 4-point swing in Pittsburgh's favor. You have the Aaron Rodgers overturned interception. That could have set up Baltimore in great field position to score. And seemingly what was a game that felt like it was slipping away from the Steelers a little bit. And then, of course, we have to talk about the Isaiah Likely overturned touchdown as well, because that drew so much ire across the national football landscape there, where that easily could have been a touchdown. And I guess by the current letter of the law with how the NFL and officiating is nowadays, that was the correct call. Officials kind of agreed that that was the correct call. Shannon Sharpe, a former Raven and Pro Football Hall of Famer, said that was the right call. But still, I think a lot of people out there can make an argument that that was a touchdown. And ultimately, that could have been the go-ahead or game-winning touchdown for Baltimore in that game. So for me, one of the biggest takeaways that I had is that with a couple different calls, if they would have went a different way, I mean, we could have been talking about Baltimore ultimately winning that game.
And when Ricky came into work on Monday, he told me that he kind of felt bad for the Ravens. And I looked at him, Riley, and I said, no, you don't. You have absolutely no sad feelings whatsoever for Baltimore and their fan base after what happened. Obviously, this puts the Steelers in a really good position when it comes to winning this AFC North. And if Cincinnati had held on to that 10-point lead in Buffalo and they had won, you know what? Maybe we're talking about the Bengals winning the division. But now it still feels like it's Ravens and Steelers. They'll meet again in Week 18. What do you need to see from Pittsburgh over the next couple of weeks? And they have a couple toughies. They've got to face Detroit. Obviously, you face a Baltimore team again late in the season. That could have massive implications. But what's the biggest thing in your eyes do you think the Steelers need to continue to do if they want to win this division and secure that 4 seed in the AFC?
They just need to be more consistent. I mean, right now the Steelers are like Jekyll and Hyde. You just never know which team is going to show up every single week. Some weeks it's going to be the offense that we saw against Baltimore, where you have Aaron Rodgers just airing it out to DK Metcalf for some big gains. And then other weeks it's going to be like the offense that we've seen as of late pretty much for Pittsburgh, and games like that loss to Buffalo where seemingly they couldn't do anything in that game. Defensively, this unit has been rough all around this season too. Like, there are some bright spots for that unit throughout the year, but other than maybe like a few games like around the Indianapolis game and the Los Angeles Chargers game, like that unit has been pretty rough for Pittsburgh this entire season. So I just want to see them maybe find some consistency here. I want to see the offense build off of that performance against Baltimore, continue to open up the playbook a little bit more, continue to do things that we haven't seen in a while with them wanting to push the ball downfield. Like, I feel like the Steelers offense has been so focused on, you know, just the quick passing game and stuff like that. Like, they haven't even been really willing to take shots down the field like we saw in that win against the Ravens. So I want to see them continue to do that, take those shots, because it can ultimately open up this offense. And I think Sunday was a great example of that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the deep shots. They had a When it rains, it pours, because
Yeah.
they hadn't in over a month gotten in any of those deep shots in October. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, talked a little bit after the game about how when you're an older QB, some days you wake up feeling good, and he woke up feeling good, evidenced by his rushing touchdown and all the deep completions that he completed down the field to DK Metcalf and then one to Calvin Austin. But something that I think is a lot of fans worried is the run defense. This
Yes.
is only, I think, the third game since the World War II era Pittsburgh has won while being outran by over 170 yards. All three of those being against the Ravens. I know Mike Tomlin talked a little bit about the impact of not about having Derek Harmon, but what do you see? What was the feeling around this team for Mike Tomlin about being better against the run and shutting down a good Miami team coming into Pittsburgh, this team with Devon Achane?
Listen, I think Derek Harmon is probably key for Pittsburgh to come back if they want to stop Achane. I mean, you have to take a look at the stats here, Ricky. Like, whenever Derek Harmon's in the game for Pittsburgh, or at least in the games he's played, Pittsburgh has allowed fewer than 100 rushing yards per game. But in games that Derek Harmon isn't playing for the Steelers, they've allowed nearly 200 yards per game. So it's really a night and day difference with Derek Harmon in the lineup. I don't know how much of that is him being this all-pro elite run stuffer, or more so that he's just better than probably Y.A. Black or some of the other guys that they are throwing out there. But having him back would be a step forward in trying to stop that run defense. But ultimately, this is something that the Pittsburgh Steelers really have been probably focused on over the course of this whole tenure as a franchise, at least dating back to 1970s. They've always been so focused on stopping the run, and the heavier downs where it's second and long, third and long, you give your defense a chance to rush the passer. You give guys like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith a chance to pin their ears back, because they know the other team has to pretty much pass on them if they want to get a first down. So really, that's the one area on defense that I think needs to be improved. Earlier in the season, it was like the secondary, but lately the secondary has been pretty good for Pittsburgh, with James Pierre stepping up tremendously, the addition of Asante Samuel Jr. and Joey Porter Jr. taking some further strides too. But that run defense just needs to be better all around, Ricky. And I think probably the answer to that is just getting Harmon back.
Around Halloween time, we probably weren't looking at this Monday night game in Week 15 and very excited about it. Not looking forward to this one, but all of a sudden the Dolphins have rattled off 4 wins in a row. And I think the big storyline that may be a bit underlooked when you've got the actual play on the field is the fact that you've got 2 head coaches who are being thrown around. The hot seat term is thrown around. This is their last year with the 2 Mikes and McDaniels and Tomlin. There's been a lot of those discussions on here that quickly got silenced, but still, Steelers fans, they're ready for, a possible change at that position. And I'm sure if you talk to fans down in Miami, they probably feel the same way about Mike McDaniels. But in your eyes, Riley, what does Mike Tomlin need to show over the next month? And I want to say, what does he need to show to keep his job? The Steelers don't like to change it up, but realistically, if he wants to stay as a coach to 2026, what exactly does this team need to show?
Yeah, listen, I mean, there's been plenty of reports out there. Adam Schefter said that he's not going to be fired during the season. I don't think many people probably thought he was going to get fired during the year. It would have probably been a case after the season or whatnot. But listen, the Steelers are going to have conversations about Mike Tomlin, because they're going to have this deadline at March 1st, 2026 to be able to pick up his option for the 2027 season. And that is supposed to be the final year on his contract, but the Steelers can easily make that decision